Hey y'all, I'm making a video today. It's actually going to be more like a commentary with some graphics to explain a subject that just popped up today that I found comical. Actually, it gets frustrating when you talk to people about issues of systematic oppression and how it affects the lives of people of color. And it's so funny to watch even liberal white people. They will band together to try to explain away the effects, the pervasive effects of ongoing racism and all different types of isms that happen to people of color and minorities. Not limited to just black people, but I find this happens all the time where I bring up instances of, the way that I travel and navigate through the world and my experiences just to be over talked by white people who will have never experienced what I've experienced, and tell me that my experiences don't exist. So just to put context to the situation, I was watching a video about this guy, and he was in Brussels, and he was at an airport, and he happened to be a black guy, and he was charged for something that I guess he was supposed to be charged for it. I don't know the details, but he was charged some fee at the airlines, and he started berating the woman who was at the desk. And this poor woman was berated to the point where she was in tears, literally in tears. And the guy just kept going in, and she had a name tag on, and he kept repeating her name and calling her by her name and just being very antagonistic and very cruel and mean. And he's a black guy. Black people are not, immune to being an asshole. They're not immune to being a fucking sexist. They're not immune to do any of those things. But at some point, I didn't see this in the video, but the guy said, "Is this happening because I'm black?" And somebody had commented, this is, the whole the race card is the wild card that people, throw out there. And I explained to him, yeah, this guy in this situation was an asshole, and he shouldn't have treated that woman that way. That was totally uncalled for. And me, as a person who works in customer service and has worked in customer service and is often talked down to by people, I am one of the biggest advocates against the abuse of customer service workers. That I want to say that first, that the guy was in the absolute wrong. And his, issue and the way he was acting so condescending with him, with the woman, was wrong, But the fact of whether or not he was experiencing that because he was black or not, I can't really say, and I highly doubt it. I think airlines suck, and I think they charge a bunch of shit to people, and there's a lot of fine print, and sometimes people don't see that fine print. And he went off on and took it out on the woman who was working, and she had absolutely nothing to do with his issues with airline policy. Now I just want to get that out of the way. So as I'm talking to these people, this guy said, "Oh, it's the race card." And I said, just because this guy was an asshat, do not underestimate the pervasiveness of the fact that people of color experienced discrimination, specifically experience discrimination all the time. And I think that as a person of color who experiences that, you oftentimes wonder, is what I'm experiencing an issue of this person being an asshole? Is it influenced by the way that I look? And sometimes you can deduce all the other reasons, and it comes down to, yeah, this person's an asshole and they're racist, but sometimes it's not. I've been accused of being a racist because a Latina came through my line she came up very aggressively, honestly, and she had 32 items, and she went through the express lane, and she was telling me that I was racist towards her and that I treated white people better. And you know what? I totally let it go because of the fact that this woman, it didn't matter to me. I don't have the position of power in society to be racist towards her, and the issue was the fact that she had 32 items in a 12 item or fewer lane. And the fact that she called me a racist does not change the fact that Latinos in this country experience pervasive and ongoing xenophobia and racism, and that just because this one person accuse me of being a racist, which doesn't bother me because I know it's not true. You know, it doesn't change the fact that Latinos experience that. And so as I'm talking to these people on the forum, they are going, well, you just don't understand his point. And, you know, this guy, he even went, the guy who I was conversing with about his problematic thing that, you know, the race card and discrimination is this wild card that people of color and minorities just throw out for no reason. I told him it kind of minimizes the experiences of when it is legitimate. This guy, he's an asshole. We can all agree that this guy is an asshole. But then this other guy who I was conversing with went on this whole tirade, got in my inbox and started writing me, oh, you're insignificant, you're nothing to me, you're this, you're that, and he blocks me after writing like 4 paragraphs, 4 different messages to me. And I told him, you know, don't write in my inbox. I put this on the forum. I never conversed with him in my inbox because I don't accept messages from people I don't know, especially when they're being abusive. And so all these people are saying, you know, well, you're the problem, and, you know, you probably incited this guy to get in your inbox, and how do we know you're not lying? So I put up screenshots. I said, this guy, you know, just did this to me. And they continue to defend him. They continue to defend him. Oh, well, you didn't agree with him, and you didn't see it from his perspective. The guy had said, well, is English your first language? Because you're not understanding. And I was like, really? You're going to ask me if English is my first language because I don't agree with your perspective? That in itself is condescending. It's trying to say like, oh, are you a foreigner? Because you don't understand what I'm saying is this white guy and I have this perspective. So I put a article about whitesplaining. And then everyone got on me like, you're just as bad as him. You're calling him a sexist and a racist. I never once called him a sexist or a racist. Because what I understand about racism and systematic racism is the fact that you don't have to be racist in the sense of you're in the Ku Klux Klan and calling people niggers in order for you to contribute to the white supremacy of this society. If you are in a space where a person of color or minority is explaining their experiences and saying, hey, this really does happen to us, and you tell me as a white male who will never experience what I experienced, that I'm wrong and that you know my experience is better than I know them, that's what whitesplaining is. Whitesplaining is when people that are closer to the status quo, now that could be rich, white, heterosexual, land-owning male, the closer you are to those categories, then you're going to experience experience life in a different way than people who are further away from those categories of status quo. And then another guy said, well, you're just telling him because he's white, he can never have a perspective on race. I said, that's not what, I never said he couldn't have a perspective. I was saying that simply because he has experienced people who have told him that he is racist, and honestly, seeing how he was acting, most likely he does do things that are racist, and he doesn't look at himself as a racist, because for white people, racism is, or being a racist is synonymous with being a bad person. Just because someone is racist or they do something that contributes and perpetuates the system of white supremacy does not make them a bad person. It makes them a person who was very well educated in the ways of our society. Society teaches white males that they need to dominate conversations, spaces, because that is what they see in society. When you have a group of rich, white, old men making decisions for women and their health care, that they feel entitled to that position, that they are the ones who get to make those decisions for other people that will never affect them. And that's what whitesplaining is. It's not an attack on white people. My husband's white. Half of my family's white. All my friends are white. Not all of them, but a lot of my friends are white. And they know when I'm speaking about white supremacy and the white behaviors, it is not talking about individual white people, and not all white people are bad. But I have to say that a majority of white people who are not educated in the ways of dealing with people of color, because white people tend to have very homogenized circles where they're not actually involved in people of color, their lives, their experiences, their cultures. They tend to get very upset when people of color tell their perspective. It is threatening of their position in society. They feel like they're losing their position in society. They feel like they're losing their dominance, that when they say things they're being cast to the side. But my question is, when this is happening to women and people of color and the LGBTQA community, do you step in and go, well, you know what? You're marginalizing their perspective. You're ostracizing them into a category where their opinions don't matter. But when it happens to a white male, you should have seen the way that people gathered around this guy. Now, this guy had went in my inbox, left all these messages, and then blocked me. So I couldn't respond to him, and I wouldn't have anyway. But he blocked me. And as I showed the screenshots of what this guy had said, everyone still continued to defend him. And this one woman even said, well, you know, you didn't take the time to realize an ally. Like, this guy is my ally, and he's writing me, telling me I'm insignificant and I mean nothing to him and I'm a racist. And she's telling me that this guy is my ally, and because I didn't recognize his allyship, that I'm for somehow wrong. And I have to say, you're not an ally if that's the way you talk to people of color when they're sharing their experiences. And I had so many women, white women, come on there and tell me, well, if this person was a woman or a man, he wouldn't have talked to her that way. And don't you realize? And it's like, dude, I'm a woman too. You know, womanhood is not synonymous with white womanhood, even though we know it when they speak of womanhood and feminism, they're not speaking about women of color. They're speaking about white women and their plight, which is fine and it's great, and I support white women in their liberation from patriarchy. But that has nothing to do with me. The plight of white women has nothing to do with me. That it doesn't have anything to do with the racialized aspect of my womanhood. Because my experience as a black woman is always going to be changed by the fact that I am black. And that the same, like, an experience of a white woman, she's gonna have her own experiences. And I'm not gonna go and say, okay, as a white woman, this is how you experience the world. But for white women, and this always, when I bring up conversations of race, it without fail, white women will come and tell me, well, you don't understand how it is to be a woman. And it's like, really? Did you just forget while you're talking to me that I too am a woman? It's the same conversations over and over again. You know, when I talk about, you know, oh, I don't like when people touch my hair. I don't like when people make racist comments about my hair. And then all of a sudden it becomes, well, if someone touched my hair, I wouldn't be upset. And why are you so upset? It's like you're minimizing the impact of what that will do when you're the only one. You're the only one of your group, and people come up and ask you ridiculous questions. They treat you in ridiculous ways. And then when you say, you know what, I don't really like that, and I don't like your behavior, and you call it out, then all of a sudden you're a racist. This is the new technique to hold on to white supremacy, to hold on to white privilege. If black people and people of color and people in marginalized communities speak out, and all of a sudden white people feel attacked, because really when it comes down to it, white people have a very low threshold for racial, what is it called? They have a very low threshold for, you know, truth of it is, white people experience racial fatigue much faster because they don't have to experience this day in and day out. And so they try to explain away why this situation was probably the person of color, you know. And in this situation, speaking of the guy in Brussels at the airport, he was wrong. But that doesn't minimize the fact that this happens so pervasively to people of color, especially, I can speak for myself as a black woman. It happens so often that when you do experience things, if someone says, you people, you know, are they being racist or are they not? If it happens so often, you almost have to question every situation, like, why is this situation happening? Is it just because this person's an asshole? Or is it just because of the fact that they don't like the way I look, or they had preconceived notions of the way that I am when I came in the door? And a lot of times the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is no. But it doesn't mean just because some people have a false perspective and a bad attitude that the experiences of other people are all of a sudden negated because of this one guy or these two guys. It's kind of like, you know, when women are beaten or they're raped, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're told, well, so many women lie about being beaten and raped that we shouldn't take people who say that they've been a victim of crime or they've been assaulted seriously because so many women lie. Well, the truth is, a lot of women do lie about those kind of things, and they're very sick people. But that does not it does not erase the fact that women experience this often on a daily basis, over and over and over again. So you know, when I'm having these conversations with people and they don't see the way that they are silencing people of color and talking over people of color and inserting their narratives over people of color, it gets really frustrating. But I know from my personal experience, because I do have a very diverse group, that this is not all white people, and that there's some white people that really do get it. And when black people and people of color and people in marginalized communities are speaking, that they actually listen. And the more that you listen to people of color and honestly listen and accept that their perspective is their perspective and that they're not lying, they're not making it up, then maybe you can understand why there's a level of sensitivity that can lead to confusion when you come into situations that are unjust or unfair towards you. This guy felt that he was being treated unfairly. This had to do with a very, I don't know if it was ambiguous, policy of the airline. I don't know what the problem was, but that guy was an asshole. But that guy being an asshole doesn't change the fact that people of color and women and all these other groups experience different experiences that people who are closest to that status quo, as I explained, rich, white, heterosexual, landowning males. The closer you are to that experience, the less experiences you're going to have to wonder, why am I being treated this way? And that's my perspective on it. If people have an issue with that, it really has to do with the fact that they don't want to recognize ways in which they participate in white supremacist behavior. They don't want to admit that people in society have it different than they do. They have a different experience because of the color of their skin, because as long as they can act as if racism and oppression is made up by the people that it affects, they don't have to take responsibility for the way that they act. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to go back and blame the person of color, or blame the person in that marginalized community for even expressing their feelings about their own experiences. And that's all I really have to say about it. What do you guys think? Do you think whitesplaining is a real thing? I know it's a real thing. Have you experienced this? Have you experienced it where, you've been talking about situations and feelings that you've experienced as a person in a particular group, and then have someone that's closer to the status quo try to explain why you are wrong and why you shouldn't feel the way that you do? Let me know in the comments. Peace, y'all. Have a good day.